Bitcoin accumulation country. It's that time again. It's the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. This is season 3, episode 6, and I'm your host, Phil. Hope everybody's having a great week. I sat down and had a really cool conversation with Joe Rodgers, who's putting together a website called Words, which obviously I'll include all the details in the show notes and everybody can check it out. He is curating some amazing Bitcoin material, and I encourage, noobs and, well-learned Bitcoiners alike to go and check it out, because there will definitely be something that you're going to find over there. Anyways, without further ado, here is my amazing, totally out there conversation with Joe Rodgers. I've got somebody that I met on Telegram in the Taco Carnivore Bitcoin Plebes group, and that I speak to on Twitter. He's Joe Rodgers, and he's doing something really interesting in Bitcoin. He's got a website called Words, and it is a monthly Bitcoin journal. But I feel like there's a lot more going on there than just that, because I've poked around the site and there is some really amazing articles, and possibly I'd say you're curating some of the best Bitcoin material. So, Joe, I'm really happy to have you on my show. Thank you very much for joining me and the listeners on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Cool. So look, we're gonna dive right into it, as is customary. I'd like to hear your rabbit hole story and the thinker behind the thought. Like what led you to Bitcoin. Sure. And how are you here now?
I'm gonna make it brief. I think that. Well, hey, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is my first pod, so very, very excited to be here. But I've listened to so many of these, so I think I've got a good gist on what exactly how this should flow. But I became aware of, I think I'm more of like on the economic side of the Bitcoiner. I'm not on the technical side of things. I became aware of the Ron Paul revolution back when he was running. I went to the local meetups and got fascinated by the whole libertarian side of things. So that was kind of like my foundation for the economic side of things. I started stacking gold and silver bullion and that sort of thing, because I thought the world was going to come to an end, and I thought sound money mattered back in those days. But it wasn't until fast forward a couple years later, probably like 2014, I was a newlywed. I had a kiddo, and I had a this is the true story. This is how I became a Bitcoiner. I had purchased some Bitcoin because I have a network access storage, a NAS, at my house, and I had all my wedding pictures and my baby pictures on there. And one day I got an email that it had been hacked, and the hackers were demanding a ransom, and they wanted Bitcoin in order to access everything. So as a new husband and a new father, I felt very shitty because here I have lost all of my newborn baby pics, my wedding pics, and I had to go tell between the legs and tell my wife this terrible story. And I was prepared. I got on Coinbase, and I had already bought the 0.6 Bitcoin ransom. I don't know. I don't remember what the dollar amount was back then. It was probably late 2014. So I was prepared to pay the ransom. And my wife, she looks at me and tells me I'm so stupid, and that she had everything. I had told her to delete everything off of her computer. She didn't listen to me. All the good pics were still on her computer. So everything was safe. But here I was sitting with some Bitcoin. So my Genesis story was kind of through tragedy. I purchased it because I got hacked, and I just kind of sat on it, and I never really thought about it again until the big bull run in 17. And then obviously price drives attention, and I remembered, hey, I have some of this in a random Coinbase account. So I mean that right there is kind of how I got my toe dipped in the rabbit hole of Bitcoin.
Okay, that is definitely one of the more interesting stories that I've heard. That's pretty crazy, though.
Yeah, it wasn't like this. It wasn't because I read the white paper. It wasn't because I had this burning spirit to just have in the Fed. Of course, I had that inside of me, but it wasn't. That isn't what got me to Bitcoin. It was because of a hacker. That's what got me to hold some Bitcoin.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, out of tragedy came something good. Like, thank God she didn't listen, and thank God that she had all those files.
That's what I'm saying. I'm thinking.
Oh, it's fantastic.
My wife, I told her, I said, babe, I got this NAS. It's got redundant hard drives. You can literally save all this space on your computer. And she just kind of nodded her head and laughed, and she did not listen to me at all. And thank God she didn't.
No, that's fantastic. Okay. So this happened, and 2017 price discovery. So, okay. So, I mean, like everybody, right? There's obviously, at this point, like 1,500 other, shit coins.
Sure.
And what's going on? Like you still, you had this Bitcoin, but at some point, I mean, you got to the point where you are now, where you got with words, and it's Bitcoin only. So
yeah,
something, I feel like something happened.
There's a story behind it for sure. I mean, I think that I've heard it before, and I can't agree more that as someone who has not done the research, I fell down the rabbit hole of just the memes of each of the coins. 17 was happening, and I think that you're kind of brainwashed growing up, like diversify. And I was the person that was just buying a little bit of everything, and I was just nodding my head and marching to the beat of the memes.
Yep.
For all the coins, Bitcoin is gold, Litecoin is silver, Bitcoin Cash is faster Bitcoin, and Ripple is for the banks. It's ridiculous. And the truth of the matter is that I was buying into that and diversifying and peddling in those things, and it took a long time. I think that it took the bear coming along, and it was pretty evident that there was one asset that was holding its own. It was Bitcoin, of course, but everything was just getting slayed, and I obviously got rid of that and got back into Bitcoin, and just held on to every last Satoshi that I could throughout the entire bear market, from the top down to the bottom. So, I mean, I bought into those memes, and I think that, there's a lot of work for us, people who care about Bitcoin, because we are the marketing engine for Bitcoin, to get out there and educate people, to really tell the memes, tell the story, frame it around, truth and liberty and freedom. So anyway, that learning that way and going down that path of diversifying, throughout the year, man, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm just thinking so much, but I finally got to a point, throughout all of 2018, just doing a ton of research. I had a Twitter account since like 2010 or something like that, but I never really understood it. And then finally, with Bitcoin and my fascination around it, I started following folks, and I finally started following like personalities on YouTube and went down that path. And I finally got to a point where I felt like, man, I'm following all this information. I've been following blogs for a long time. I've done a little bit of curation in the past. I thought, man, I should do a crypto newsletter. And that was my like big idea. So I started making a big spreadsheet of like interesting articles that I came across, and it quickly grew really, really big. Tons of rows, as you can imagine. There's tons of news that's happening across space, beyond just Bitcoin.
Oh yeah.
Through personal conversations, and I thank God every day I slid into some DMs with Michael Goldstein. That's Toshi Nakamoto Institute. He's so fantastic, and DMs are open with him. Just talking to him about, I had this big idea, and would he be interested in any kind of collaboration before I had produced anything. And I told him my idea, and he was pretty adamant about, hey, Joe, look, appreciate what you're doing, but I really have no interest whatsoever in anything besides Bitcoin. I think that it's all a big scam and yada, yada, yada. I'm paraphrasing. I don't even think those were his exact words. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he essentially, helped me see the light that, hey, there's one thing to focus on. So I started doing more homework, and I finally launched. It was literally like March 1st was the first time that I put out anything for the journal. And it was Bitcoin only since day one. So that I'm pretty proud of that. So anyway, that's kind of a long story about how I got to where I am. And man, just super bullish and excited to be here.
Man, that's fantastic, and definitely a big shout out to Mike Goldstein and Pierre Rochard, because
Oh,
they
both those guys are
right.
killer. I mean, they're open DM. They literally they've been doing it for so long, and uh, I've heard stories in the past. Some of the OGs, you get tired of the entry level questions, but they'll take them. They took mine. They guided me, and so my hope is that the next generation, we pass the torch. We're there to take some of those easy questions, take some of the burden off the OGs, and help. I think that what we've seen is just some really fantastic resources and onboarding tools be spun up over the past 24 months. So, man, that I'm just so excited to be part of that.
Yeah, so let's talk. Let's dive into these resources, right? Like specifically the resource that you're creating, words. So I noticed that you're curating. I mean, to me, you're curating like the best, most diverse Bitcoin articles that we can find. But like you're doing a monthly journal, but it seems like you could just go on the website and pretty much find any article you want as well.
Sure. So the way that the website's set up today, it's basically I wanted to create something for somebody who doesn't have time to spend time on Twitter all day, someone who doesn't um, cruise Medium all day, but something that could be published where you could see thoughtful articles from the thought leaders either on Twitter or on a Medium post or a blog post. Um, Basically any kind of written format besides like formal like educational white papers, because I think there's a place for that. That's not what this is. It's really like essays and kind of long form articles, so that someone could kind of see what people are writing for that month. So that was kind of the idea behind it, because I've done my homework. I wasn't able to find anything like that. So I wanted to kind of bundle them all together in some kind of digestible format. So words became, in its HTML format. If you just visit the website, um, I see now that it goes all the way back to February 18, monthly journals. So if you just go to the website and hover over journals, you can see there's kind of monthly um, bundled together web pages that have all the articles that happened that were published during that month. But the idea is that we'll share that out, that web page, but also we'll bundle it into a PDF format, just so it's portable and it's kind of nice to look at. And some crazy people are printing them out.
Cool.
But the idea for the project, it dates back to, it started 1 year ago, so it's 2020, back in spring 2019. But I'm trying to go backwards towards Genesis block. So I've been doing a ton of homework of trying to locate and dig up, fantastic articles that have been written backwards through time. So I'm kind of going month by month backwards through time, as well as forwards, because things are happening linearly forwards. So I'm kind of going both ways on the time scale to try to track down the best articles and updating the journals as I come across new stuff.
That's awesome, man. Just sitting on the fence,
Yeah, for sure.
You're right, between the past and you're right, between the past and the present. So it's interesting.
Man, it's crazy to go through the timeline, and you can see where different people have contributed and where they've stepped away from the scene, which is fine, of course. But it's interesting to see just certain names pop up, and then you see certain names that have been present for many, many years, and they just continue cranking out content. I mean, the space is really fascinating. I just looking, of course, I'm biased, but I think if you look at some of the other coins that are out there, you will not find another body of work that has been published that could even compare to what has been written about Bitcoin.
Yeah, I definitely going to agree. So, okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you here,
Sure.
because you're curating all this info so far. Okay, no pressure, but if you can remember, what are your favorite, like we'll say, Bitcoin articles or authors? Whichever one you can come up with, and we'll share the links in the show notes for the listeners.
Sure. So Um, I've got two folks that come to mind, and you did not prepare me for this. So, but off
I
the
did
top of
not.
my mind, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of people that I think are really fantastic. But there's two authors that kind of right now I just love where their heads are at. Um, First one is going to be probably more well known. Our friend Gigi.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that Gigi. I mean, I bought his book. I've been
Same.
following his stuff. I'm super bullish on what he's writing. I really like the spirituality aspect where he's coming from. That's kind of a side project that I got going on. I'll talk about that more later on. But I just love I love where his head's at. I think that it's super philosophical. And I think that there's a place for that in Bitcoin.
Oh
So
yeah.
reading his writing is something that I don't know. It makes me hyper bullish. It makes me excited, and it makes me really think. And it's not talking about throughput. It's not talking about OPSEC. It's talking about really bigger picture internal things, and that gets me excited. So that's one person.
Cool.
The next person, maybe a little bit lesser known, doesn't have quite as many followers on Twitter, but oh my God, he's been on a couple pods. His name is Erik Cason, ErikCason, and he is
Nope.
a next level thinker. His website is cryptosovereignty.org, I believe. But he has got a body of work. I first came across it because Nick Carter, also one of my favorites, he put it out there. He put a tweet out. I came across this guy. You've got to follow his work. He's very underfollowed, but he is by far got one of the most intellectual, just really philosophical blogs and just body of work about crypto and Bitcoin specifically that I've come across. So those two guys are two of my favorites. But I mean, honestly, they're Parker Lewis, you name it, Nick Carter. Those two guys are just so thoughtful. And then, my God, I'm just looking through the list of authors that are on the website, and there's so many thoughtful people.
Insane, huh?
It's insane. The body of work around Bitcoin is absolutely crazy.
Got to give a shout out also to Dan Held, right?
Oh my
Of
gosh,
course,
he's a
Dan,
killer
and and Brandon Quidham, right?
for
Got to give
sure.
a shout out to those guys, the body of work that they've both done, which I still I'd love to get both of those guys on a podcast because
Oh, you'll get them. You'll get them. Hang in there. I think
Brand.
that
I mean, I've done work. I've done the interview separately, but I'm saying together because Dan did the planting Bitcoin,
oh yeah,
and Brandon did the mycelium comparison. So it's like it's
they go
interesting,
hand in
right?
hand.
Yeah,
Sure,
in a way, so
they do. I
like
think that's
nature
awesome.
based.
But I mean, but they make so much sense. It's really rad.
Um,
Um, my favorite article though, like seriously, one of my favorite articles from 2019.
yeah.
I want to get the Drew Bonsall and his Bitcoin astronomy. I don't know if you read that
Yes,
article.
absolutely.
That article,
Amazing.
I love sci-fi, but man, that article had me going so excited thinking about the future.
So deep, huh?
Oh my God, that was so killer. That was one of my favorites.
I love the articles that you sit there and as you're reading it, you kind of like picture yourself in this alternate universe in that article,
For sure, yeah. I mean,
It's
it was so sci-fi, but at the same time, it was very logical, and the reasoning behind why certain distances matter from the Earth. Anyway, for those of you who have not read it, I'm sure Phil's going to link to it. So
yeah.
read these articles.
Yes, we're gonna post links in the show notes for the listeners. But okay, we're gonna go back to something that you said just before.
Sure.
Because Gigi, and I totally agree. Of course, I also have his book, and I recommend it to everybody, especially noobs, because not everybody wants to read. Yeah, I want to touch on that point. Not everybody comes at it from the technical angle. It's like I'm technical, but I'm also philosophical. So for me, Bitcoin touches on both of those aspects. But to your point, not everybody wants to read about throughput and UTXOs and, in coin joins and stuff like that. There is the philosophical aspect of Bitcoin, but you were discussing something about spirituality. So I
Sure.
kind of want to touch on that. What's going on there?
So, thanks for asking this, because it's something that I definitely, it's kind of far out there, but between Gigi and Brother Friar Hass, they've kind of, I don't know, I feel like they've kind of taken the mantle for this thought leadership around Bitcoin as a religion. And I mean, first of all, the word religion is off-putting for me personally, because I'm a recovering Catholic and I'm not trying to offend anybody. It's just kind of like the whole organization and, controlling your thought. It's kind of, that was off-putting for me as a religion. But um, the angle that they're coming at it from, if you look up, the actual Webster dictionary definition of religion, Bitcoin is a religion if you look at it from that point of view. So for me, just hearing what they have to say about how the mind virus, and how we are giving to Bitcoin and Bitcoin is giving back to us, I'm totally in agreement with that. And I think those guys are really, they're pushing people maybe to an uncomfortable place. And I think that's an okay thing. I think it's okay to be uncomfortable, and I appreciate what they're doing. And kind of after reading and listening to these guys, what they have to say, I I, I agree with them. I find myself nodding my head, and I kind of liken Bitcoin, besides just a religion, I kind of see it as a likeness to Freemasonry. And I don't know if you saw that one coming, but
Oh yeah.
I am a first degree Freemason. I've joined that probably like a decade ago. And for just certain reasons, I wasn't able to continue my progression. I would like to. But I also did college fraternity. But a lot of the morals and virtues and lessons that you learn in both, college fraternity and Freemasonry, I see in a lot of the things, a lot of the memes that Bitcoiners talk about.
Yep.
You talk, lower time preference literally translates to a lot of moral things.
Absolutely.
So I think that there's a lot to be said about that, and I think that those guys are on to something. I think they're on to something big. And so I started a small little personal just GitHub, thinking about the Bitcoin ritual, thinking about it in context of what Freemasonry is, and like what would a Bitcoin ritual look like? What are some of the morals and virtues? So it was just kind of a thought experiment and something I'm playing around with. But I'm super fascinated with that whole side of Bitcoin. And some people might be listening thinking, yeah, shut up, who cares? Just religion is silly. But I think that in my personal experience, Bitcoin has meant a lot. And I think it has made me a better person. It's made me think about life differently. It's made me just the single thing that changed me was the lower time preference. Just there's so many things that go along with it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It does lead to more, and I've said this also as well many times. I believe that it incentivizes higher quality activity. It incentivizes just higher quality, let's say, ideas, right?
Sure.
Because you're not just trying to quote unquote get the quick fix and move on. So as a result, it ends up creating, I'd say, longer lasting, maybe we'll say better things. So at least that's the way I picture what Bitcoin will bring in the future. But it's really cool that that you found symbolism comparisons between Freemasonry and Bitcoin philosophy, because I practice or used to practice we'll say Hermetic magic, which essentially combines Freemasonry and Freemasonic rituals
Sure.
with we'll say transcendental magic and breathing exercises and whatnot. So it's very interesting, because to me, Bitcoin does somehow manage to fit into this because of I guess we'll say because of its qualities and because of what it incentivizes.
Sure.
So
No, I
I find that
agree.
very interesting, you know?
I and I want to go a step further. My wife, she has to listen to me talk about Bitcoin all the time, but
The poor wives.
I know the poor wives, but my wife is a Bitcoiner for sure. She loves
Nice.
it when I'm stacking. She actually wears an open dime around her neck. I got her on a gold chain. So she's all in for sure. I mean,
Nice.
she's not like stacking herself, but she encourages me on my stacking. But she is like a practicing white witch. So
Oh, cool.
she's definitely into magic, and in her exploration and listening to me, she is working on a piece, the witch's case for Bitcoin. It's going to be an article, but I think it's super fascinating because when you think about Bitcoiners, they're the lower time preference itself, our desire to seek out the most energy efficient sources for mining. Um, it literally encourages, not polluting, taking care of the earth, and a lot of virtues that witches, they want to take care of Mother Gaia. It's just crazy. So my wife, she's super bullish, and she's got something in the works on that front.
Oh,
So that should be interesting to see from a witch's point of view, the witch's case for Bitcoin.
that's fantastic, man. That is
Yeah,
absolutely awesome. I actually, so it's interesting, right? My wife is actually I'd say similar.
sure.
We'll say a witch, and also into, like she doesn't stack herself. She has some sats, um, but is also like very supportive of my stacking, and
Sure.
it's just interesting, right? That like I'd say that there's many people in Bitcoin that just are outside just outside the normal ring, like we'll say a little bit more like the critical thinkers, you know.
Sure.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
totally.
excited to read that piece that your wife's gonna write, man. Like, no pressure, but like,
Well, I'm thinking it. Just talking to her, I've talked to her so many times about it, and she's got something cooking. But it'll be interesting because like there's a whole you know new group of people. It's Bitcoin's marketing engine is the users, and there you go. Maybe you're able to connect with a whole group of people who have never even thought about or considered a case for Bitcoin. So I don't know that there's tons of other groups out there that are just waiting to be tapped.
absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. People. I think that if people really understood their money, right? If the average person understood fiat currency and understood Bitcoin, I really believe that people would actually choose to use a higher quality of money. You know,
No doubt.
I
I
mean,
couldn't agree more.
it's just I think people, okay, sure, the average person, they say, doesn't care, but let's be honest, we've been fairly indoctrinated not to care. I mean, my parents told me to just not really ask any. I mean, when I'd sit there and be like, who makes the money? Well, the government makes the money, and that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you're like, oh, the government makes the money, and you don't really think about the fact of like what is actually happening behind that curtain, and what's really going on, and that you're actually getting poorer because they control the money supply.
I agree. I mean,
you
over here
know
nodding my head. I mean, it's just so true, and unfortunately, it just takes a little bit of I don't know. You've got to seek it out. You've got to just kind of seek it out on your own, and it doesn't happen for everyone at the same time. And I can't remember who coined the phrase, but everyone will find Bitcoin at the exact perfect time when they're supposed to. I think Gigi said that.
yeah.
But everyone will find it when they're supposed to find it, and that's fine. And that's kind of interesting because over the past probably 24 months, I have just been so like raising my hand to talk about Bitcoin to people, and kind of probably I don't know, not annoying, but my meat world friends don't give a shit, and that's okay. But now I've literally over the probably past like 3 or 4 months just kind of chilled out, like they'll find it when they need to find it, and I'm gonna keep doing the best that I can to spread the good word and to keep my project going and keep archiving because that means a lot to me. And they'll find it when they need to find it, and that'll be okay. It isn't my job to find it for them. So
It's interesting that you say that, right? Let me ask you this. Have there been any friends that you've gotten into Bitcoin and, like, let's say, even shitcoin, and let's say they, kind of look at it as like stocks, like they really just don't
sure.
get it,
Uh, so
and you just don't know
sad
how to show
answer,
them what it is, you
the
know?
sad answer is that I've talked to countless people, friends in the real world, and there's no one who's like converted as far as I am, who like really is
Yes.
all in on the revolution, which is fine, and they'll get it when they want. I still hear a lot of FUD, and I respond with the right answers. And I don't know. I think I told you in a DM. I'm in a really small market. I'm located in Arkansas, and the local meetup scene is atrocious. It is literally just a couple crazy country speculators. A couple of them subscribe to some paid groups, and they come and they shill just shit coins. And a couple times I've been there and I just bite my lip and listen because I just want to be around people who like give a shit. So I quit going. I started a new Bitcoin only meetup. I've literally started it probably 2 weeks ago. We've got about 10 people signed up. So we're going to have our first meetup soon. But in the real world, I haven't had a lot of luck converting people. There just hasn't been a lot of interest here locally. And there's just, I don't know, man, just not a lot of thought about that here, man. It's so painful. I feel like I probably am like the most hardcore Bitcoiner in the state.
You feel like
For
you're
sure.
on an island, right?
I do. Yeah.
It's
And I think the second most hardcore is my wife.
it
Hey,
definitely.
so if
Yeah.
you're out there listening and you are in Arkansas or the surrounding states, hit me up, please, and let's have a cold beer because I need some brotherhood.
Cool. We're gonna provide your Twitter contact details,
No doubt, no doubt.
so somebody can get in touch with you and hang out and talk about Bitcoin. And I'm not gonna dox the. There is a local Bitcoiner, one local Bitcoiner to me here, who actually listens to my podcast, and it's pretty cool. So I'll give a shout out to him. He'll know who he is.
Right
And
on.
yeah, so I'm pretty lucky. I have one Bitcoiner that lives nearby, but you know what, like. I'm in Massachusetts, and I know that there's actually quite a few Bitcoiners that live, let's say, like an hour away from me or an hour and a half. So there are some decent ones, but I've never actually been to any of the meetups. So it's pretty
You
bad.
need to get in the car and go do it.
I know, but I'm too lazy. You know,
I mean,
it's like,
we're all remote anyway, so
so it's so much easier to just do this. But I'm willing to go fly somewhere for a conference,
no doubt.
which makes no sense. So, you know, but yeah, it so to go back to what you were saying about the meat space. Okay, so like I've managed to get a few people into Bitcoin, but to your point, it's interesting, right? Like you said, like, and they'll get it when they get it, but then you sometimes feel like they're never actually going to get it, and by the time they get it, it'll just be so far out of reach, you know?
Sure. Like, do you, and by
You know?
far out of reach, you mean the price,
Yeah.
or do you mean something else?
No, I mean the price.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, because of inflation and because of the way, like, because of the way they produce
sure.
money. Yeah.
I I agree, and I mean, I've I've I haven't been around Bitcoin long enough to where I've ever just provided a faucet of Bitcoin or just gave Bitcoin away to friends. I haven't been around that long, so I've never experienced that. And I've heard some older emojis talk about like I don't do that anymore because people generally either they care or they don't care, and I think that's true. So I'm becoming a bit more. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting a bit hardened on if you care, then I'll care about putting some time into you. But now, man, I'm just kind of taking a stance of backing off from the real world friends. And if it comes up in conversation, I'll have that conversation. But I found a long time ago, just with politics in general, back in the Ron Paul days, I was so just loud and ready to fight and argue about politics. And I learned a long time ago that that's not the way to be. I know what I believe, and I know that I'm right. and and that's okay. And I'm kind of, unfortunately, I wish I would have just known that with Bitcoin. But now I'm personally starting to feel that way, that, hey, I'm coming at peace with my personal understanding of Bitcoin and what it means to me. And I think it's important, and I'm going to contribute the best way I can. I'm not a coder, but I can talk about it, be knowledgeable, educate myself about it, and curate it. And that's okay. And if you are a friend of mine and or an acquaintance and you want to talk about it and learn about it, I will absolutely do everything you can. But man, I'm really trying to just chill the fuck out. I mean, like, it's taken a long time, but I don't know. I think it might just be personal development for myself to chill out.
So two things I want to touch on what you said, right? Like one of the last things is, you're not a coder, but here you are contributing, and I think that's really important because a lot of people feel that if they're not able to write code or create in that way, that they can't contribute, and that's not true. Like that's just
Sure.
not the case. So there's a lot of different ways to contribute to Bitcoin, and to educate yourself and help educate others. And the other piece was going back to convincing people, like you said. I've also like I don't try to convince people anymore. I mean, I'll listen to their arguments,
Sure.
and cringe. But at the end of the day, it's you just like you don't need to convince them anymore. It's at this point, this I guess the same way that I felt when I first found Bitcoin is the way that maybe they look at it. Like it's they haven't come to the realization yet that it just doesn't die. Like
Sure.
and I think that's the thing. Like they constantly think that this thing will just go away and it's just a fad, and they find themselves another year later, another 2 years later, and it's still there and it's chugging along and it's bringing more things in with it. So I think like it's like it just kind of sells itself. And like you said, we're kind of like that education layer of it, where we go out and spread the message. But at the end of the day, once they start falling down that rabbit hole of information, it pretty much it stands on its own it stands on its own 2 feet.
Sure. No, I agree. I think that um, that that's I think that there's a lot of people similar to me, not like me, obviously, but similar to me out there that are wondering, what can I give back to Bitcoin? Because that's what I felt. The mind virus took over, and I wanted to be a part of this, and so I did the best that I could. So I think that advice that I would give, it would be to educate yourself first and foremost. Just do your research, and then try to make real connections. Try to connect with people. I know that I'm active out there on the internet trying to connect with people. So I'd say just raise your hand and reach out to the thought leaders, because you know 50% of the time they're going to respond to you and give you a thoughtful answer. But try to connect with other, even people on your own level, and because the community is real, and I think that relationships do matter, and that helps build the network. Not just for Bitcoin and number go up, but just for you and in your mind, and your place with Bitcoin. So that would be a couple thoughts on that itself. Um, so anyway, yeah, just thinking out loud, just where I've been over the past kind of 2 years, it's crazy. You do your homework, and it gets a hold of you, and you just want to connect with somebody. That's how I felt, and it
Yep.
just took sending, literally, like, if you see the little envelope on someone's Twitter, send them a DM and talk to them. I would say make the connections. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and engage, because people will talk to you about this.
Yeah, I think that's really key, right? Like, I mean, hey, it's important to to get out there and engage. You know, like that's definitely key, because I could say when I first got into it, I pretty much for the first 3 months just sat there and scrolled through Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I never responded to anything. And
Lurking.
well, yeah, right. You know,
Sure.
like you just you want to learn, you want to see the flow, and you want to understand, and you know you want to try to figure out, you know, what's noise, what's signal, and you know who's trying to
It
sell
takes a
you
long
what,
time to. Oh, for sure. I mean, everyone's a scammer. Let's not forget that.
right?
And I mean, shout out to Goldstein. But what I mean, like you got to build your education base before you feel like you can add to a conversation. I get that.
Yeah.
But on your way, raise your hand and participate and slide into DMs. Don't be afraid to do those things. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. So let me ask you this: what I guess what does the future hold for words? Like right now, it's a monthly journal.
Sure. Um, so right now, I mean, the goal for me, I have first of all, for everyone, we've got like 23 months of journals on the website, 350 plus articles, 70 different authors' work have been put on here, and it's all in GitHub. But it's got a nice front end thanks to GitHub pages. And the reason I say that is because this is not. There's no ads on this. This is really just a project to preserve the writing of people who have thoughtful content in this space. So I want to put that out there. Um, so that what does the future hold? I think that we're going to continue doing monthly journals of capturing tweets, essays, anything kind of long form written word. We're not doing anything with pods or audio or video. That's not the point of this. Uh, but a big thing is it comes down to bandwidth, and we want to keep moving backwards towards Genesis and getting old articles into the system, into the platform, so that we really want to. My vision, someone said it, would be the like Library of Alexandria for Bitcoin. I really want to have just all the think pieces from the thinkers in one spot. But something that I've had a lot of success with. Um, I've got a couple of new ideas that are coming along. So I produced last year was the Bitcoin Financial Journal, and essentially it's 20 plus articles about different Bitcoin metrics, like MVT ratio, stock to flow ratio, you name it. Just there's all these different on chain and off chain metrics that people have outlined and put in long form content, describing how they came about creating these and what the formulas are. So I put them all into like one consumable format. So if you're out there and you're listening and you care about learning about charting and the thought behind and metrics and on chain and off chain numbers, this might be something that'd be right up your alley. So that's interesting. That's one thing that I created, but something that I think might have some value moving forward would be author specific journals. So I made one for Gigi. Obviously, I'm a fanboy for Gigi, but and he's super open about open source everything. But you might see some more author specific, like an anthology for specific authors as their body of work continues to grow. But something that I'm excited about is Bitcoin and the many disciplines. So we have the financial journal. I would like to see maybe like a technical journal. So it kind of highlights some of the more technical articles that have been featured in words, and then maybe a politic journal. So you talk about governance and the political and human right aspect of words. So I think that you might be able to see specific curation around specific topics moving forward. I mean, at the end of the day, all the good stuff's going to make its way in. It just comes down to how the curation, how I decide to pull them together. So that's kind of what I'm thinking moving forward.
Very cool, man. That's seriously like it's one of the. If you ask me, that it's going forward, man. You're gonna look back at this thing in 5 years from now and be like, you know, I managed to pull together everything to make one of the biggest Bitcoin resources that matters.
I
So
appreciate that.
seriously.
Over the past 12 months, it's exceeded expectations. I mean, the numbers aren't crazy. I mean, um, I do a monthly newsletter where I publish everything through Twitter and then through a newsletter. That's it. So we've got like 250 subs on the newsletter, which is fantastic. It started at 0. So I'm super thankful. I think it's awesome because people care about, Bitcoin writing. And then the Twitter's at 500 plus. And it's so awesome. But it started at 0 and it shows that there's a market and there's people out there that care about, this content. And the website has grown as I've learned more about the back end of it, because I'm, like I said, I'm not a coder. I'm just stumbling along. But just to see it grow and develop, it's been really fulfilling. So I feel like, I think Friar Hass said it. The curators out there are like monks of the, kind of like Christian Reformation or Protestant Reformation, kind of out there pulling in all kind of works diligently, transcribing things. And I feel like a Bitcoin monk. I'm doing God's work here, trying to pull everything together for future people.
I like that, man. That's awesome. And we appreciate it. And
Sure.
thank you very much. So I guess before we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with the listeners?
I guess I'm going to talk about, I guess, something that I'm a part of that I'm like pretty excited about. I think that, number one, please check out Words. I think that you'll find value if you like the Bitcoin space and like learning. I think that you'll find some value there. I think that the other thing that I'm kind of helping out with is a little startup called lmpay.co. It's essentially a paywall built on Lightning. I think that Brady talks about it in the past too, but me and Tim, we've got quite a good relationship on Telegram. Been working with him on the marketing side of things. So definitely check out lmpay.co. They kind of power some of the donation side and distribution for the newsletter, as far as make a donation and download the PDF of the journal. So I think that Tim and LMPay, they got a bright future. But besides that, man, super bullish, super excited. I think that we are really on the dawn of the Bitcoin revolution. It's not going anywhere. Number is going up, and that's fine. It can go as slow as it wants. I wish it would go down so I could stack some more sats.
I know.
But I'm just telling you, it's exciting to be a part of it, because I think that we've got a generation of people that just wanted to be a part of something to bring a change, and this is our chance. Satoshi gave us something really, really moral and awesome. So let's take it. This is our chance to bring some change around the world.
Right on. Absolutely. So look, man, thank you so much for taking the time to come on my show. I really appreciate it.
Sure. This was a fantastic experience. I appreciate it.
Cool. What's going on, Bitcoin accumulation country? My name is Phil. This is the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. We're in season 3, and this is episode 6. Hope everybody enjoyed my crazy discussion with Joe Rodgers. I definitely enjoyed his rabbit hole story. I was not expecting that, and I was definitely not expecting us to go where we went with all the the Freemasonry and witchcraft and stuff like that. So it was definitely really cool. Anyways, I'm gonna post links to Words in the show notes, and if you want to reach me, I'm on Twitter and Telegram at CoinIcarus. If you want to reach me by email, it's coinicarus@funwithbitcoin.com. And if you want to support the show, you can head on over to moedarags.com, go to all clothing, and then Fun with Bitcoin podcast and check out our merch. All right, everyone. Catch you next time.